Well, hello, good morning and welcome to Camilla and I. I'm Mark Cooper, a Royal Photography Society wildlife photographer based here in the UK. And this week on Camilla and I thought we'd discuss why on earth have I bought a second 2x teleconverter for my Sony range of wildlife lenses. So is it as usual on Camilla and I that we've got more money than sense? Why on earth do we require another 2x teleconverter? Well, most people struggle to use one, and the main reason people don't use teleconverters is that they're not usually compatible with the lens that they're using. And also, keep watching, because I'll tell you the Sony lenses that are not compatible really with the 2x converter, and also the Sony lenses that you cannot use teleconverters with at all. Okay, which is quite a limitation in the Sony range. So let's go through the main disadvantages of using a teleconverter. A 2x teleconverter doubles your base aperture, so a 6.3 lens becomes f11, f13, and some lenses that start at say f8 would become f16. And this is a limitation for a couple of reasons. It reduces the amount of light going through to the sensor, and this affects autofocus in particular. It's okay on bright conditions, but if it's raining, dull, etc., teleconverters become really unusable in those sort of conditions. And not only does it affect the autofocus ability of the camera, but it also affects the quality of the photograph. And a 2x teleconverter can create quite a soft image. So this is why, on the whole, most people try and avoid using a teleconverter and use the lens straight out of the box with no additions. But there are some Sony lenses that work particularly well with teleconverters, and the first lens I'd suggest everybody has got in their bag is the 70-200. Most people, when they start acquiring a system, end up with a 70-200 lens in their bag, and normally the 70-200 Nikon, Sony, Canon takes a teleconverter exceptionally well, and this is your first, I would suggest, foray into say wildlife photography or any length of photography. This will take your 70-200mm, if it's an f2.8 for example, this will take you to a 400mm f5.6 with the 2x converter. And this now works exceptionally well with this lens. Most of the 2x and 1.4x converters were specifically originally designed with the 70-200 in mind. So this is a very cost-efficient way of getting to 400mm, and indeed we have this combination with us today. We've got the 2x teleconverter on the 70-200 on the A9 III as our second body today. So although you do get a loss of autofocus ability, it depends on the lens you're using, and some lenses are extremely good, as I say, with this combination, and the 70-200 is no exception. The next lens that is extremely good with teleconverters is the 300mm, the Sony. The Sony 300mm f2.8 takes the 1.4 and the 2x teleconverter extremely well. You do get a slight loss of autofocus capability with the 2x teleconverter, but otherwise the sharpness and the quality is absolutely beautiful out of this combination, almost as good as the 600mm f4. Not quite, but almost. And of course you get a 5.6 rather than f4 bokeh, but this is a tremendously light package as opposed to the 600mm f4, which weighs 3 kilos. This is about half the weight, so a tremendous walk-around combination. The 600mm is the other lens that takes teleconverters particularly well. I've owned the 600 for past 5 years now, and it takes a 1.4 teleconverter superbly, taking you to an 840mm lens at f5.6. And indeed, you can go all the way to 1200mm with the 2x converter with a very usable f8. Of course, it's the distance you are between you and your subject which causes the problem. It's the diffraction and the rubbish that gets in the way before you reach your subject. So going to 1200mm is not necessarily the answer. Your feet are definitely the answer. It's well worth getting in closer to your subject than ever trying to get extra reach on your equipment. But in certain circumstances you have no choice, and the 1200mm provided by the 600 and the 2x teleconverter can in some cases prove totally invaluable. Now, the other lens that will take teleconverters in the Sony lineup is the 400mm, and apparently it takes the 1.4 teleconverter pretty well. I must admit I've never owned the lens, so I can't comment on this personally, but this is what I've heard. The 1.4 gives you a 560mm f4 lens, which is very good, but it does weigh 3 kilos. But the 400mm does not apparently take the 2x teleconverter very well at all, so you're probably better off leaving the 2x teleconverter at home if you're using the 400mm. So why on earth on Camilla and I have we got two 2x teleconverters? Well, today, for example, we are packing the second body. We've got the 300mm with the 2x teleconverter, giving me 600mm. But also, I'm taking the 70 to 200 with me, with the 2x teleconverter as well. And this is for dragonflies today. The pseudo macro capabilities of both these lenses. This lens focuses down to 0.4 of a metre, and with a 2x teleconverter on it, I can get an almost 1-to-1 magnification with this combination. And indeed, the 300mm with the 2x teleconverter, I've got a minimum focusing distance of 2 meters, which gives me a good distance from the subject so it won't fly off. But also, I'll still get a reasonable sized image in the frame. Again, not as good as the 70 to 200, but still pretty large in the frame, as I demonstrated last week on holiday in Cévennes, France, particularly with the Southern White Admiral. Got a lovely diffused background on that one. Okay, the lenses I would not use with teleconverters are, firstly, physically, you cannot use a teleconverter on the 90mm macro lens or the 135 f1.8 lens. Both those lenses are incompatible and will not take teleconverters in the Sony lineup. It's not the same, I believe, with Nikon and Canon. And the other lenses I wouldn't recommend using a 2x teleconverter on are the 100 to 400, the 200 to 600, and the 400 to 800mm now, because it just makes your f-stop ridiculous. You can possibly get away with a 1.4 on the 3 lenses, but not the 2x teleconverter. It's just too much. It makes your f-stop ridiculous, and your autofocus capabilities, the light coming into the lens, you're looking at f8, f11, f13, whatever. So amazing. Great. Oh, pause. Oh. All right, morning. Oh, morning. You got them well trained, blimey. Beautiful. Good boys. So the reason we need two 2x teleconverters on Camilla and I is because we're greedy. No, I want a 600mm available at all times if possible in wildlife photography, and this 300mm and the 2x teleconverter stays virtually on this lens virtually all the time. I'd always go out with this combination. 600mm f5.6 is a very usable focal length, and if you've got it in a lightweight package where you can go anywhere, and you've got the Colin Brister monopod SpeediGimbal system, this is a superb lightweight combination. So basically I've taken up one of my teleconverters almost permanently on the 300mm. So then when I do take a second body like the A9 III with the, I need another teleconverter to get me to that 400mm on the 70-200, just to give me that extra reach in on the subject, particularly dragonflies and dragonflies in flight. If necessary, of course, I can take off the teleconverters at any point, and obviously this also gives me more flexibility. With the 70-200, I'm able to zoom in and out. This will be a now 140 to 400mm lens, absolutely superb. And of course, when we're not doing dragonflies and we're doing birds, I still take along this combination, the A1 with the 300 and the 2x teleconverter. But also, sometimes you need even more reach, and occasionally I do go to 1200mm, as indeed with these peregrine falcon recently I've been photographing. I've gone to 1200mm using the 600mm f4 with the 2x teleconverter, but I still want the flexibility of this combination. If one of the peregrines takes off, for example, I still want to get it in flight with this combination, whereas I'd struggle to get it in the frame just with the 600mm on its own or with the 2x teleconverter. So it's very useful operating the two systems at once, I find. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you think Camilla and I are totally mad. Let me know if you don't use teleconverters whatsoever. They ruin the lens quality. I understand, as I've identified, unless you're using specific lenses, I suggest they're not for you. But otherwise, yeah, comment away. But anyway, thanks for watching an episode of Camilla and I on the amazing subject of the £500 teleconverter roundabout. I think Canon are more expensive. I think they go up to 650, and I think Nikon teleconverters are less. But don't quote me. Go to your local Castle camera supplier and pick up your teleconverter if you think you need one, having watched this video. Anyway, have a good one. Bye from Camilla #1 and I.